Both. Those royal towels? They're folded in thirds with a prayer between each crease. The sultan's underrobes? Laundered with a specific blend of rosewater, vinegar, and mint, stirred counterclockwise under a waxing moon. There's an old superstition among your fellow eunuchs: never whistle while boiling the sultan's trousers. Supposedly, a man did once, and the next day the palace falconer found his remains nestled under the aviary. It's probably just a joke. Probably. One of the younger eunuchs, wide-eyed and always sweating, whispers to you, "Is it true the sultan once executed a laundress for shrinking his prayer cap?" You give him a look and nod toward the iron tongs. There's a ritual to teaching the rookies. Let them sweat it out for a month before telling them which legends are real. You shift toward the folding tables, low wooden benches lacquered in thick beeswax. On them lie silks from Persia, cottons from Egypt, wools that somehow made their way from the Balkans. You can tell where each cloth was woven by touch alone. Some eunuchs dream of freedom. You dream in thread counts. But don't let the silks fool you. This place is dangerous. Not because anyone carries a sword, although, technically, the laundry foreman does keep a dagger in the bleach barrel for emergencies, but because your job requires invisibility, perfection, and clairvoyance. One towel returns slightly damp? That's an insult. A captain hung wrong side out? That's sabotage. A harem girl's veil ironed too flat? That's practically a political statement. You've seen men demoted for less. Tonight, your priority is the sultan's nightwear. It's a blend of ivory silk and fine cotton, designed to wick away both sweat and sin. You hold it up, spotless, thank God, and start the slow process of folding it with hands that still ache from yesterday's batch of ceremonial sheets. Those were tricky. Gold thread is a nightmare in steam. You hear a soft splash. Somewhere behind the linen screens, someone just dropped a basin. You don't look up. Not your problem, unless the splash landed on the princess consort's underskirts. Then it's very much your problem. A fat gray cat slings between your ankles, a semi-official laundry mascot. You've named him Nar, short for Narancai, the Turkish word for citrus, because he once fell asleep in a crate of lemons. He's the only creature in the palace allowed to nap wherever he pleases. Sometimes you envy him. Sometimes you suspect he's spying for the chief eunuch. The laundry doesn't close. Not really. There's always something drying, soaking, airing, steaming. Some historians speculate this 24/7 rhythm was about hygiene, but you know better. It was about power. You can't rule an empire in dirty underwear. You glance at the hanging sheets, dozens of them gently billowing. The courtyard breeze makes them look like ghostly dancers in a silent opera. They're all the same length, 82 inches, because tradition demands that bed linens be 2 inches longer than the sultan is tall. Just in case he grows. Just in case. Outside, the call to prayer echoes softly, blending with the hiss of steam. You pause, bow your head, whisper a line you barely remember, then get back to folding. There are rules, yes. But the laundry follows its own religion. And here's the secret: you like it. The rhythm. The smell of soap and control. The way everything has a place and a consequence. You're not just washing linens. You're laundering history. Every hem you press, every collar you iron, it's a thread in the empire's tapestry. One time, a concubine tried to slip a message to her lover in a rolled-up towel. You intercepted it. You burned it. But you read it first. You always do. That's how things are done here, in the soft shadows of Topkapi's hidden laundromat. You're not just a servant. You're a quiet puppeteer. And the strings? They're cotton. Always 600 thread count, minimum. You didn't always live among bubbles and secrets. Once, you were a boy with a different name, in a dusty village far from the palace walls, catching lizards in clay pots and watching the smoke rise from your mother's cooking fire. Then came the snip. It wasn't called that, of course. There were more refined terms: initiation, selection, conversion, but every eunuch remembers it as the snip. One moment you were whole. The next, you were part of the system. They told you it was an honor. That few boys were chosen. That you'd live in a palace, dine better than any farmer, and wear robes finer than your old village elder. They didn't mention the pain, or the way your voice would turn strange, or how you'd have to relearn how to walk, to sit, to sleep without certain, usual parts. Historians still argue whether this practice was exclusively reserved for enslaved boys from Christian or African lands. The truth? It was a mixed bag. You've met eunuchs from Nubia, Georgia, Albania, even Venice. Some were war captives. Others were purchased. A few, terrifyingly, were volunteers, though you're still not convinced they truly understood what volunteering meant. The palace surgeons were swift and cold. They didn't look you in the eye. Afterward, you were bandaged and left to recover in a long, narrow room that always smelled like cloves and regret. Some boys didn't make it. The ones who did, they woke into a new life. You remember your first uniform, a simple white robe, stiff at the collar and scratchy at the seams. You looked ridiculous, but you wore it with pride, because you'd survived. That's the first unspoken rule among eunuchs. Survival is status. Rank is earned not with charm, not with swords, but with quiet endurance. Your name? Gone. They gave you a new one, something short and easy to bark across marble corridors. You took it like a second skin. The name you were born with became a ghost, only surfacing in dreams or when you caught a whiff of that stew your mother used to make. From that point on, you belonged to the palace. Not as a man. Not as a boy. Something in between. Something other. At first, your duties were small. You polished brass. You delivered messages. You fetched water and practiced the art of silent presence. Older eunuchs watched you like hawks, correcting your posture with a flick of a sleeve or a whispered insult. Walk softer. Bow deeper. No eye contact unless you're summoned. But even then, the hierarchy loomed. Not all eunuchs were equal. The black eunuchs, the Kisler Agassi and his inner circle, held power that made viziers nervous. They guarded the harem, stood outside the sultan's private quarters, and whispered in the ears of women who could birth heirs. They were formidable, respected, feared. Then there were the white eunuchs, paler, usually European, and less revered. They managed paperwork, protocol, and the education of young princes. Necessary, yes, but rarely powerful. The rivalry between the two factions? It was soft, simmering, and ever-present. Historians still debate whether it was formal or just whispered disdain, but you've seen laundry fights between factions end in accidental drownings. Coincidence? Maybe. You learned fast to navigate this world, not just with obedience, but with observation. Who favored which coffee blend? Which concubine disliked citrus scents? Which guards preferred their robes triple-starched? Every detail mattered. Information was power, and you were now in the perfect position to collect it. One of your first lessons came from a terrifyingly elegant black eunuch named Salim. He had a voice like crushed velvet and a smile that never reached his eyes. He summoned you one morning with a nod and a question. Do you want to clean rags forever, or do you want to become irreplaceable? You chose the second, of course. Everyone does. So he taught you things the surgeons hadn't. How to stand at the perfect angle so no one notices you're listening. How to detect a lie by watching nostrils, not eyes. How to wrap a turban with symbolic folds that could mean I know, or don't trust her, or tonight. He also taught you the importance of fabric. Cloth, he said, holding up a strip of crimson silk, isn't just decoration. It's armor. It's code. It's message. You believed him the first time you saw the Sultan's mother reject a petition because it arrived on the wrong parchment stock. That poor fool never got an audience again. Over time, you climbed the invisible ladder. Your robes grew softer. Your duties more refined. You were assigned to the laundry not as punishment, but as preparation. It was where the true initiates were tested. After all, the laundry sees everything: sweat, blood, desire, decay. It is the silent witness to empire. And now, you command it. Sort of. You're not the highest-ranking eunuch, but your authority in this corner of the palace is undisputed. The others defer to you, not because they like you, they don't, but because you've never ruined a single hem. And because once, during a chaotic spring thunderstorm, you caught a runaway robe before it flew into the harem courtyard. That saved someone a lot of explaining. Still, sometimes you think about that boy you were. The one with a different name, different dreams, and two working, well, you know. He's not entirely gone. He just learned to fold himself up neatly. Like a towel. Like a memory pressed between pages. The wind rises through the courtyard again, rattling the copper pans outside. You breathe it in, damp, metallic, clean. You're not free. Not really. But in this world of starched protocol and steaming secrets, you've carved out something rare: relevance. And for a eunuch, that's everything. You walk the tiled halls like you own them, not because you do, but because your rank allows you to glide through spaces most can't enter without permission and perfume. And you do glide. That's half the point. You learned early that noise means weakness, that every scuff of a slipper or creak of a floorboard chips away at your authority. Silence is your power suit. Inside the world of eunuchs, there's a structure more intricate than any palace mosaic. You start as the lowest, barely more than a shadow. But every towel folded correctly, every whisper remembered, every mood read just right, earns you steps. Literal steps. You get quarters slightly closer to the warm pipes, slightly further from the rodent-prone north wing. You get better soap. You get respect, delivered, of course, in backhanded comments and slightly warmer eye contact. There's a reason the palace divides you into two kinds, black eunuchs and white eunuchs. The split isn't just pigment, though skin tone does play a role in the raw, uncomfortable truth of Ottoman social geometry. It's about function. The black eunuchs, mostly from Sudan and Ethiopia, run the harem. They answer only to the sultan and his mother. They guard the imperial women like a lion watches cubs, and not just from outsiders, but from each other. White eunuchs, often taken from Europe, Slavic lands, the Caucasus, sometimes even Italy, are like ghostly clerks. They don't guard, they manage. They don't whisper behind veils, they file reports, oversee kitchens, or train little princes who'll one day stomp through your halls acting like they own the world. Because they probably will. And of course, there's rivalry. Not open, never open. That would invite punishment. But it simmers like soap left too long on the fire. Someone forgets to forward a message. Someone else misplaces a bundle of linens belonging to a black eunuch's favorite concubine. And if, say, someone's ceremonial captain goes mysteriously missing right before the Festival of Roses, well, you definitely didn't see it get tossed into the kitchen fire. Even if it smelled oddly like saffron for 2 days. Historians still argue whether this tension was institutionalized or merely tolerated. But when you look into the eyes of a white eunuch who's just realized his privileges don't reach the harem gate, you see something raw. Something sharp. Your own role crosses boundaries. You started in the white eunuch's world, documents, robes, routine. But now, you spend enough time managing harem laundry that the black eunuchs tolerate your presence in their scented sphere. You're the bridge. The folding diplomat. The keeper of secrets with foot in both worlds and trust in neither. Salim, your once mentor, now rival, calls you the ghost between halls. He means it as both compliment and warning. You've gotten too good. Too notice. And that's dangerous. There's a hierarchy even among equals. Seniority counts. Whispers count. Proximity to power counts the most. The Kisler Agassi, the chief black eunuch, wields influence that terrifies even grand viziers. He can grant access to the sultan or block it forever. He chooses which concubines rise or fall, which princes receive tutors, which whispers become edicts. One time, you saw him adjust his robe mid-step, and 3 guards knelt. Not bowed. Knees to marble. That's the kind of power you feel through silk. And yet, he eats boiled beans and rice like everyone else. You, on the other hand, still eat standing up. Laundry eunuchs don't sit during shifts, not even on feast days. There's an unspoken rule that if your knees don't ache by midnight, you haven't done your job. Tonight, you're supervising a handoff. A delicate one. A robe worn by the Sultan's mother, cleaned, pressed, and now ready to be returned without fanfare. But here's the twist, it smells faintly of sandalwood, not her usual jasmine. That's a problem. A small one. But in palace terms, small problems bloom like mildew. You have to walk it back personally. You pass younger eunuchs doing the midnight rotation, fetching buckets, whispering gossip, sneaking glances at one another like they haven't yet learned to stop caring. You envy them, a little. Not because they're naive, but because they haven't yet realized how much they'll have to trade in order to rise. You hand over the robe with the usual bows and formulaic greetings, but in the receiver's eyes, there's a flicker. She smells the difference too. She nods. Says nothing. But you know you'll be questioned tomorrow. Maybe not officially. Maybe it'll be just a conversation over rose tea. But it'll be a test. Everything is. Back in the laundry quarters, one of the newer recruits tries to hang wet towels too close together. You stop him with a whisper. Mildew grows in cliques, you say, watching his eyes widen. He'll remember that. They always remember the first time a senior corrects them without shouting. It's more terrifying. Sometimes, You wonder what your life would have looked like if you'd never been taken. Would you have grown a beard? Married? Become a baker like your uncle? It's a dangerous train of thought, one that ends with regret, and that's a scent you try not to carry. Instead, you measure success by fabric. How many ceremonial tunics you've saved from wine spills. How many veils you've folded so crisply that the wearer gasped in delight. How many black eunuchs have nodded your way in silent, reluctant approval. You've seen power shift like a curtain in wind. Concubines become mothers, mothers become regents, regents fade into whispers. But through it all, you've kept folding, sorting, pressing. That's the thing about hierarchy here, it's invisible, but sharp. You might not have a title etched in gold, but you know which robes to starch, and which to stain slightly if you want to send a message. And sometimes, when a white eunuch brushes past you too quickly, or a black eunuch raises an eyebrow just a little too high, you remember, you're not just a servant. You're a ghost with purpose. A whisper with hands. A power hidden in steam. The cauldron room is where your empire begins. Not with trumpets or poetry, but with water, fire, and the fine balance between scorch and purity. The copper vats hiss with age, their handles worn smooth by generations of eunuch hands. You run your domain with the precision of a general, only instead of swords, you wield tongs, steam, and strict temperature charts etched into your memory. Tonight's task? The Sultan's hunting caftans. 7 of them, each with gold threading, velvet trim, and the unmistakable tang of horse sweat and conquest. He wore them just yesterday on a falconing expedition near the Sea of Marmara. You know because one of the sleeves still has a blood smudge, not his. Likely deer. Or boar. Or something with more claws than brains. First rule of palace laundry, royal garments don't soak in public. You prep a private basin, draw hot water from the central hearth, and supervise the mixing of the soap blend like you're crafting a potion. Which, let's face it, you sort of are. Your recipe includes olive oil soap from Aleppo, distilled rosewater, and a spritz of vinegar that would strip varnish off a vizier's ego. It's not just for cleanliness. It's preservation. These robes are heirlooms. They've witnessed diplomacy, seduction, and assassination. And they must look flawless. Historians still argue whether laundry rooms like yours were purely logistical spaces or semi-sacred domains. You know the answer. Because when you lower the first caftan into the swirling water, it feels like a baptism. A purification not just of dirt, but of intent. And that's when the silence breaks. A younger eunuch drops a ladle, the clatter echoing like a cannon. You don't yell, yelling is for amateurs. You just glance over, one eyebrow slightly arched. He scrambles to recover the tool, mumbling apologies, and you let the silence do the rest. You instruct 2 juniors to rotate the garments counterclockwise. That's the tradition. Clockwise is for funerary wear. One of the few superstitions you still honor. You don't believe in curses, but you've seen too many coincidences to completely dismiss them. Like the time a robe was soaked in a clockwise swirl by mistake, and the next day its owner fell down a staircase. Slippery sandals, the official report said. You still have your doubts. The water begins to cloud, an alchemy of sweat, soil, and secrets. You lean in. Not to sniff, exactly, but to assess. Scent tells you more than reports. You once caught a concubine's affair because her underrobe smelled faintly of imported lavender, a fragrance forbidden to all but the Sultan's favorites. She disappeared 2 weeks later. No one spoke of it. But you kept her robe. Washed it. Folded it. Shelved it like memory. The laundering process is a dance. Each step deliberate. Soak, stir, rinse, squeeze, press. You monitor everything, temperature, humidity, the exact shade of the rinse water. Some eunuchs think you're obsessive. Others think you're enchanted. You prefer the word prepared. Today's fire is unusually feisty. The hearth flares with a hiss each time you open the draft. You've long suspected the fire has moods. Like a palace cat, it resents certain people. It once flared up just as the kitchen overseer entered, nearly singeing his mustache. No one's allowed to say it was deliberate, but no one really minded either. As the garments dry, you move on to folding. Here, too, there's a ritual. Caftans are folded twice widthwise, then lengthwise, then again into a tight bundle like a blessing. You keep your hands steady, your breath even. The act is soothing, like meditation, or like controlling the one part of the palace that doesn't try to poison you. Quirky tidbit, One of your predecessors insisted all drying lines be strung from left to right in order of rising zodiac signs. He claimed it brought harmony. You think he just liked having an excuse to hang Gemini's linens first. Still, you follow the tradition. Not because you believe it, but because he lasted 40 years without a single demotion. That kind of record deserves respect, or replication. Suddenly, a towel catches fire. Just a lick of flame from a stray coal, a brief whoosh of orange. You react instantly, bowl of rinsed water, tossed with practiced aim. The towel's scorched but salvaged. You'll have to rewash it. It's the Sultan's foot towel. The man who causes burns in his foot towel is, legally speaking, playing with fate. There's a moment after, when the steam hangs thick, that you catch your own reflection in a copper basin. You look older. Not just tired, aged. Like the folds in your forehead were pressed there with the same precision you apply to the Sultan's linens. You blink, and the image vanishes. Later, you check the fabric inventory. Every robe, towel, veil, sash, underrobe, headscarf, and foot wrap is listed. You run a finger down the parchment, murmuring the items aloud like a litany. You've added 3 new lines yourself, notations for weather-based drying variations, scented layering protocol, and, your personal favorite, a margin warning that simply says, "Do not steam while distracted." You're almost done when Salim arrives. He doesn't speak, just watches. He's here to inspect, or intimidate, or, possibly, flirt. You've never quite been able to tell with Salim. "Too much rosewater this time," he says, sniffing a sleeve. You smile. "Or not enough sandalwood." He arches a brow. You walk a thin line. "That's where the cleanest folds lie," you reply. He leaves without another word. You return to your work. One garment left, the ceremonial cloak for tomorrow's imperial council. Midnight blue. Heavy. Lined with sable fur. And still carrying the faint scent of horses. You soak it gently, humming under your breath. A tune your mother once sang, though the words are long gone. The water laps. The steam curls. The fire settles into a quieter crackle. And you, the master of water and fire, work by instinct and legacy, crafting not just cleanliness, but control. Because here, in the laundry, cleanliness isn't just godliness. It's survival. You slide the last folded robe into its cedar-lined drawer with a whisper-soft exhale. The scent of lavender and oak lingers, fending off moths and memory alike. But just as you're ready to breathe easy, one of the younger eunuchs bursts in, robes askew, panic on his brow. "The ledger's off," he whispers. "A towel is missing." You blink. "A towel? One?" 1,000 might go unnoticed in the outer wings, but in your wing, your tally is gospel. Every thread is tracked. Every cloth, tagged and counted. A missing towel is not just a lapse, it's an insult. Possibly even a warning. You summon him over. "Which one?" He fumbles with the logbook, fingers smudged with soap paste. "Number 3287. Gold-stitched edge. Designated for Lady Hafsa." You close your eyes. Of all people, Hafsa Sultan. The Sultan's mother. Her linens are handled like relics. Inspected. Blessed, almost. A missing towel from her quarters is a calamity wrapped in terry cloth. You retrace your steps. The towel came in 2 days ago, hand-washed by your second-tier crew, sun-dried, rose-scented, folded, logged, and vanished. It didn't go out with the rest. You remember seeing the monogram, an elegant HS sewn in gold thread, looped in the shape of a tulip. Only the highest-ranking women receive monogrammed linens. It's not just fabric. It's status. You whisper a command. "Check the harem tunnel." And the east line racks. Quietly. The younger eunuch vanishes like steam through a keyhole. Here's the truth. You've spent years building a laundry empire inside this palace, and that empire rests not just on starch and scent, but on precision. People think fabric is soft. But your system? It's sharp. Each linen is coded. You use thread colors to denote priority, blue for personal items, green for ceremonial, red for dangerous. You even developed a system of faint perfume tiers. A hint of sandalwood means urgent. Lavender? Routine. Oud? Royal. Historians still debate whether this kind of detail management truly existed or is just romantic revision. But you know it did. You invented half of it. And now it's failed. You pace past your folding benches. Your foot brushes the brass corner of the towel register, a wooden chest where completed laundry is relogged, perfumed, and queued for dispatch. It's the closest thing you have to a treasury. Some say a clever eunuch could smuggle anything in there, documents, jewelry, even bribes. You don't. But you've checked it. Repeatedly. You remember once finding a single pomegranate seed pressed between towel folds. It meant something. You're still not sure what. But the towel was Lady Marima's. And her lover stopped coming to the palace 2 days later. A rustle near the entrance. The younger eunuch returns, pale and breathless. Found it, he says. You let the silence build. He swallows. Folded behind the wrong drawer. It was stuck. You say nothing for a moment. Then nod. Bring it. He does. You inspect it. Gold thread intact. Clean. Slight scent of clove, Lady Hafsah's signature. No damage. But then, you notice it. A fold slightly out of place. Not just lazy. Deliberate. You unfold it. Slowly. Inside, tucked between the terry layers, is a tiny scrap of parchment. Rolled. Tied with a hair. You hold your breath. This isn't your first message in a towel. The parchment is damp from the oils, the ink smeared, but legible. You read the first line and freeze. It's not a love letter. It's a warning. Tell the Valide Sultan, the rose bleeds at dawn. What does it mean? A plot? A signal? The rose, that could mean one of the concubines. Or someone in her service. Or even one of the eunuchs. Your mind spins. You rewrap the towel. Not a wrinkle out of place. Now what? You could deliver it. Pretend you never saw the note. Or you could burn it. Protect the system. Protect yourself. After all, you were trained not just in laundry, but in discretion. You tuck the towel back into the dispatch chest. Fold it again. This time perfectly. Somewhere, a door clicks. Time resumes. You step back, make a small mark in the margin of your ledger. Not the usual, you draw a tiny rose. No one else will notice. But if this ever comes back to haunt you, that rose will tell you, you knew. See, your job isn't just folding laundry. It's organizing the threads of power, masking tension in the scent of jasmine and pressing danger into rectangles. And part of that job is recognizing when you're no longer laundering just garments, but secrets. Your next task is already waiting, the Sultan's spring linens. A full set. Bed sheets, nightclothes, wall drapes, floor cushions. He changes everything at the first bloom. Some say it's superstition. Others say it's ritual. You say it's bureaucracy. The spring set is delicate. Peach-hued silk and pale green cotton. You sort them by texture, run your hand across the weave. You've got a trick, crack your knuckles just before folding. It helps your fingers sense imperfections. You fold fast, but methodically. You sprinkle a blend of cardamom and lemon peel between layers. It's his seasonal scent. You've been tweaking it for years, and no one's noticed. Except the food taster, who once said the Sultan smelled like dessert. A cough behind you. Salim again. He walks up, picks up a folded cushion cover. Too soft. You raise an eyebrow. That's the Sultan's lumbar support. We've upgraded. He snorts. Next you'll be choosing his slippers. Already did, you say. He liked the arch support. Salim almost smiles. You both turn toward the dispatch window, where the linens will leave your world for the palace's silkier corners. As they pass into couriers' hands, you press your fingers against the wood. Your domain ends here. But your influence? That travels. Because long after the garments are worn and stained again, your touch remains in the threads, invisible, silent, but always there. The fire roars a little lower today, soot curling up the flue like lazy ribbons of ink. You step into the main cauldron chamber with a small sigh, muscles aching, hands smelling faintly of saffron and starch, and survey your empire of water, fire, and discipline. If yesterday was chaos, today is course correction. Laundry, at your level, is ritual. Controlled, coded, and obeyed like scripture. And just like any religion, heresy has consequences. A singed cuff here, a misplaced turban there, these are not just mistakes. They are offenses. Against tradition. Against reputation. Against you. You stand before the copper cauldrons, the giants of your trade. They dominate the chamber like bronze deities, each with a personality. The one closest to the east wall, for instance, Always boils unevenly unless you feed it a pinch of salt first. Superstition? Maybe. But she's never ruined a veil since you started the practice. You lower your hand toward the bubbling vat, judging temperature not with a thermometer, but the feel of the air on your palm. A skill no outsider believes until they witness it. Historians still argue whether Ottoman laundry masters used temperature gauges or just instinct. Truth is, you are the thermometer. Steam plumes up, hot and fragrant. Today's batch includes lime peel and bay leaf, to balance the acid in the more delicate linens. One of the juniors approaches with a bundle of the Sultan's undershirts, wrapped tight and tagged with the royal emblem. You inspect the tag. It's the old version, last season's thread. Sloppy. Redo the tag, you say, without looking up. But they're clean. They're wrong. He nods, vanishes. You'll follow up later. Discipline starts small. A tag today. A disaster tomorrow. You begin the loading sequence, heaviest cottons first, then the medium silks, finally the delicate muslins. Like layers of a story, each one deeper, more secret than the last. The fabric swells and twists in the heat, and you stir it with a long-handled paddle carved from fig wood. Some say fig resists odor. You just like the grip. Then you test the starch. It's not just about stiffness, though yes, nothing should be limp, but about attitude. Robes must carry posture. Trousers must rustle with authority. Your mixture? Potato starch, dried orchid, and a whisper of alum. Not too much. The Sultan likes a snap in his robes, not a crack. A young eunuch runs by with a stack of towels, damp, scentless, and nearly tripping from their weight. He's new. You let him trip. Part of training is understanding when to help and when to observe someone land on their pride. He recovers. Learns. You move on. You inspect the linen drying area, where rows of fabric hang like sails on a ship destined for some ceremonial sea. The lines are drawn tight, angled for airflow. You had them adjusted 2 years ago after realizing mildew favored the north corner. That change alone saved a dozen uniforms from silent doom. A strange stain catches your eye, a coppery smear on a white tunic from the kitchen staff. You pinch it, lift it, sniff it. Not wine. Not blood. Possibly beetroot. Or ink? You make a mental note. Stains are the gossip of fabric. They tell you what really happened when the guard said he fell or my concubine had a nosebleed. You delegate spot treatments to Tariq, one of your more meticulous assistants. He treats stains like sins, unforgivable, but not unfixable. You've seen him remove turmeric blotches with vinegar and raw sheep's milk. You never asked how he discovered that combination. Some knowledge just arrives, fully formed and slightly cursed. The fire hisses, and you glance back to the cauldron. Time to rotate. You slip on your thick gloves, shaped like oven mitts but reinforced with camel hide, and plunge your arms into the vapor. The laundry code requires turning the load clockwise 3 times, then counterclockwise once. Not just for even wash, but to honor the ancient order. It might be nonsense. It might also be why you've lasted this long. A story flickers in your mind. Your predecessor, Bayram, who once ignored the rotation rule to save time. The next day, the Sultan tripped on his own hem in front of foreign dignitaries. Coincidence? Maybe. Bayram retired the same week, quietly. In a corner near the drying racks, you set up your secret weapon, the scald board. A flat stone slab where you test the linens with a heat stone, a smooth, fire-warmed disc you press against the cloth. If it puckers or wrinkles, it goes back in. If it lies flat, approved. It's this attention to invisible thresholds that makes your domain run smoother than the harem corridors. Those poor souls are always untangling drama. You solve problems with boiling water and steam. You pause for a moment, wiping your brow with the hem of your own robe, dyed gray, always, to avoid distracting from the whites and creams around you. A funny thing, being in charge of color while dressed in none. Nearby, one of the juniors is practicing folds. You walk over. His corners are uneven. His final crease curves instead of snapping like a blade. Use both thumbs, you say. Tuck the edge under. Think of it like locking a door. He nods, tries again. Better. Folding isn't just about neatness. It's about power. A perfectly folded robe stands on its own, defying gravity. It shows respect. It shows control. A bad fold is like a weak handshake. It makes everyone uncomfortable. The fire crackles low now. Almost purring. You kneel, toss in one last scoop of olive with chips, then rake the embers with your iron fork. They spark like tiny stars, then settle into red calm. You sit back, just for a moment. Not on a chair, you're still working, after all, but on your heels, spine straight. You think about how many robes you've handled. How many people you've protected with cleanliness. How many scandals you've quietly dissolved in soap. You wonder, will anyone remember you when these walls fall? When the palace becomes a museum and tourists stare at empty laundry rooms, will they know? Will they feel the heat you mastered? The code you followed? Probably not. But then again, maybe some linen will survive. Folded just so. And some future curator will wonder, who pressed this so perfectly? You rise again. The next batch is ready. The first thing that hits you as you step into the sending chamber is the weight of the air. It's not heavy like steam, it's dense with fragrance. Layers of rose, oud, ambergris, and the occasional hint of cumin from someone not rinsing properly. You inhale it like a fine wine, rolling it through your nose and back out your mouth with practiced control. This is the final step in the process, and you treat it like a sacred rite. Laundry without scent is like a story with no ending. It's clean, sure, but incomplete. And in the Ottoman palace, scent is status. It's memory. It's weaponized suggestion. You've mastered the delicate dance of perfuming fabrics, and in doing so, you've claimed a corner of quiet power no one ever questions. You begin with rosewater. Always. It's the base note, the safe bet. You dab it onto linen towels, especially those heading toward the harem. Too much and it screams desperation, too little, and someone might think you forgot. You never forget. Next comes musk, sparingly. It's potent, animal, seductive. Used mostly on robes worn during feasts, diplomatic visits, or when a particular concubine wants to tilt the room in her favor. You once overscented a cushion with musk, and a minor court poet fainted. Claimed divine inspiration. Wrote 12 verses. All terrible. Historians still argue whether these sending practices were rigidly formalized or improvised based on mood and occasion. You say, both. There's a formula, yes, but it breathes. Like fabric. Like politics. You approach the rack of scent ampoules, each in a small glass vial sealed with wax and a bit of embroidered thread. You made that system yourself, to avoid mixing them up. A mistake once had a Janissary captain smelling like gardenias for a week. No one let him forget. Then there's the oud. Dark. Mysterious. Smoky. Oud is expensive. It comes from the hardwood of Aquilaria trees, which must be infected by a specific mold to produce the scent. You don't use oud lightly. It's reserved for the Sultan's inner garments and ceremonial prayer rugs. You apply it with a brush made from peacock feathers. The softness matters. So does the symbolism. You brush it along the inner hem of a night robe. The scent won't be obvious until the body warms the fabric. That's the point. Intimacy by design. A message no nose can read until it's already too late. But scent isn't just indulgence, it's surveillance. You track who's been near whom by the mix of smells on their clothing. The Valide Sultan's robes now carry a hint of saffron, a spice favored by her rival's kitchen. Coincidence? Doubtful. You once uncovered a secret tryst because two robes, allegedly from separate wings, came back smelling of the same hand-crushed iris blend. You mentioned it, quietly, to Salim. The affair ended that week. No thanks given. None expected. There's a curious parcel today, 4 veils, returned with no tags, folded too neatly. Suspicious. You unfold one. It's scented with something wrong, rosemary and cloves? That's a winter blend. We're in spring. Someone's trying to confuse your tracking. You refold the veils, leave them unscented. Neutral. Sometimes the best move is to erase the board entirely. A young eunuch approaches with a box of personal linens, likely from a favored concubine. You scan the contents. Handkerchiefs, a prayer shawl, a sash. All whisper wealth. All demand subtlety. You scent the prayer shawl with vetiver, earthy, grounding. The sash gets nothing. Silence can be a statement. The handkerchiefs? One gets orange blossom, one lemon, one left plain. She'll know which is for which occasion. You don't need to ask. She once winked at you during a festival procession. That kind of boldness deserves fragrant respect. A strange moment happens next. One of the palace physicians enters the chamber. Rare. He's holding a bundle of linens marked for a minor prince's quarters. His nose twitches at the smells. This much scent, isn't it excessive? You smile gently. Is air excessive? He doesn't reply. Just leaves. Good choice. Scent, you've learned, travels faster than rumors and lingers longer than scandal. It clings to memory like smoke to wool. You once scented the Grand Vizier's cape with the faintest drop of camphor. Cold, sharp, unsettling. He paced the council chamber all day like something was behind him. Never asked why. Never traced it to you. But his servants began airing out his wardrobe daily after that. Every day. 4 months. Some might call that petty. You call it calibration. And the debate over scent's purpose? Scholars will argue till the domes fall. You've heard the theories, scent as status, scent as hygiene, scent as mysticism. They're all true. They're all wrong. The truth is simpler and stranger. Scent is control. Invisible. Inescapable. You move to the dispatch trays now, placing the finished pieces into their respective lacquered boxes. Each box lined with cedar shavings and wrapped in soft cloth. You seal them with palace twine, knotted in a specific way. Only 3 people know the pattern. 2 are retired. You're the third. Before the boxes leave, you take one last look. Everything folded, aligned, fragrant, but not aggressive. It's a delicate line. A few years ago, a guest from Persia remarked that the Sultan's linens smelled like a jealous orchard. You adjusted the ratios the next day. The orchard calmed down. One more thing before you close shop. You pass by the laundry log, flip to today's page. In the margin, beside a robe from the harem wing, you make a small note. Wrong season, clever hands. No name. Just the fact. Someday, if someone reads your notes with the right nose, they'll understand. You extinguish the incense. Fan the room clear. Let the linen ghosts drift silently back into their boxes. Outside, the call to prayer begins again, lilting across the courtyard. You pause, not for religion, but for rhythm. Then you exhale, scented faintly of lavender and ash. And step out into the unscented night. You move silently toward the hammam, bare feet whispering against warm marble, breath sinking with the subtle pulse of steam escaping from the bathhouse vents. The palace hammam isn't just a place for cleansing, it's a theater. A murmuring chamber of half-silences, bare feet, and secrets wafting up with the lavender vapor. As laundry master, you don't officially work here. But unofficially, you haunt it. This is where linens are born into their filth and where their stories begin. It's also where gossip leaks faster than a worn wool towel. The main hall is domed, its ceiling punctured with small glass windows like stars in daylight. Steam hangs like a veil, softening edges, disguising voices. You slip inside unnoticed, towels slung casually over your shoulder, as if here for a routine check, of course. Nothing suspicious. Just checking if the sending protocol for bathrobes is being followed. Naturally. The men here, the janissaries, the young pages, the pashas loosening their turbans, they forget who's around when the steam hits their skin. Rank dissolves in humidity. You've heard things here that would earn exile in the daytime. You pass the inner pool where Vizier hums softly while scrubbing his armpit with pink soap and political resentment. A younger concubine attendant sits nearby, speaking too loudly about a harem girl who fell ill after drinking spiced milk. You pause. Spiced milk? That's the third one this week. Noted. You keep moving. Historians still debate whether eunuchs played roles in bathhouse surveillance. Some claim it's exaggerated, Orientalist fantasy. But the hammam is your second office. You don't just scrub towels. You scrub truths. And you've gotten quite good at reading a man by how he washes. There's a rhythm to the gossip here. Someone mentions a prince's new falcon. Someone else jokes about how many times the falcon has escaped. Someone else mutters that the bird's not the only one trying to fly the palace. You catch that one. Store it. Near the back wall, a few eunuchs are massaging old cloths against the smooth stone. This is where the pre-wash begins, removing oils, body scent, and loose threads before the real laundering. You nod toward the pile and lift a particularly fine towel. It's silk-threaded cotton, monogrammed, and, here we go, stained faintly with something crimson. You sniff. Pomegranate. Probably. Could be wine. Could be blood. You tug the towel under your arm and slide back toward the prep bench. There's a small wash basin there, and you dab it. Too thin for blood. Too dark for wine. Still, the ambiguity lingers. You make a note in your mind. No need to accuse. Just adjust the roster. See you use the bath this afternoon. A eunuch approaches, Arif. He handles the hammam shifts. Young, still eager, with ears slightly too big for his head. Problem? He asks. No, you say, showing him the towel. Just checking dye resistance. He nods, a little too quickly. Probably thought he covered that towel already. You tuck it back under your arm and walk away. If someone asks later, it was just misplaced. You're doing everyone a favor. You step through the warmest room, where the water is hottest and secrets are slippiest. 2 concubines attendants, older women, sharp-eyed, sit dabbing scented oils onto fresh cloths. They don't see you at first. Then one glances up, pauses. You're not due here today, she says softly. You smile. Neither is pomegranate and bath towels. She chuckles. Doesn't deny it. You glide past. The hammam isn't always a place of whispers. Sometimes it's loud. You once heard a janissary sing a bawdy love song about a palace gardener, not realizing the chief gardener was right behind the steam curtain. That's how one of the courtyards got mysteriously repurposed. You stop at the drying racks. Hammam linens are different, looser weave, more absorbent, often embroidered with the owner's symbol. You scan today's collection. One is missing a hem tag. Another smells faintly of lemongrass, but no one in this section uses lemongrass. A mistake? Or a swap? There's an old eunuch proverb, when towels trade scent, hands have met. You leave the towel there but flip its position. If someone comes back for it, you'll know. Nearby, someone coughs. Deep, dry. You recognize the sound, Salim. Of course he's here. His role doesn't require bath visits, but he's everywhere you are these days. You're getting too good at this, he says. Too good at what? You reply, not turning. Listening. You smile. That's what ears are for. He sits on the edge of the marble basin. Water laps quietly behind him. His robe is damp and wrinkled, an intentional choice. Looks low rank, but only a man with power can afford to pretend otherwise. You ever wonder, he murmurs, what would happen if someone scented the wrong towel with jasmine? Something meant for the valide, placed in the concubine wing? Accidents happen, you say. Sometimes towels get confused. He laughs, soft and low. Sure they do. The conversation ends there. As always. You leave the hammam slower than you entered. The warm air clings to your skin, loosening your joints, quieting your thoughts. But not your mind. That keeps ticking. Back in your wing, you mark the towel as treated in the ledger. Not because it was, but because you need to watch what happens next. Sometimes the absence of a stain causes more panic than the stain itself. As the sun dips low outside the high bathhouse windows, casting golden light across rising steam, you find yourself thinking, everyone cleans themselves here, but no one leaves clean. Not really. You open the drawer with reverence. Inside, nestled on silk padding like holy relics, are the Sultan's socks. Not his boots, not his robes, not even his ceremonial girdle encrusted with rubies and power fantasies. No. Tonight, it's the socks that demand your full attention. Fine silk, hand-stitched, dyed in imperial hues, deep green, crimson, and occasionally pale violet for spring mornings when he feels whimsical. His word, not yours. These socks are not footwear. They're protocol. They are washed in a separate cauldron. Dried not on lines, but on a padded rack in a warm stone alcove. Folded using a custom trifold method you invented after one was returned with a crease. A crease. The kind of detail no one else would notice, except he did. You lift one carefully. The thread count is so high it feels like holding woven air. The toes are slightly reinforced, he's a heavy stepper. And on the heel, in minuscule golden embroidery, is his tugra, his personal calligraphic seal. It glints slightly under the lamplight, a tiny flourish of power. The problem with socks is they're intimate. Robes billow. Sashes swirl. But socks cling. They absorb the sweat of the day, the mood of a hunt, the heat of a secret rendezvous. That's why they're treated like royal correspondents. And why laundering them is, frankly, terrifying. You once misplaced a single sock. Not lost, just misfiled in the linen chest for ceremonial accessories. But for 3 hours, it was unaccounted for. You didn't breathe properly until it was back in its drawer. When Salim found out, he didn't scold you. He just said, you have no idea what that could have cost you. He was right. Historians still debate how involved the Sultan really was in domestic protocol. Did he notice sock creases? Did he issue edicts about towel scent? Some say no. But you've seen his face when a garment returns off by a shade. That's not the look of disinterest. That's someone who pays attention, who sees everything, who remembers. And so, tonight, you treat the socks like they're whispering his will. You begin by soaking them in a rose and vinegar solution, measured to the drop. Too much rose and they smell like a perfumery. Too little, and the vinegar dominates. You stir the solution with a small golden ladle gifted to the laundry wing by the late Valid Sultan. It's ornamental. You use it anyway. Tradition, after all, sometimes demands silliness. Then comes the rinse. You use water drawn from the cisterns fed by the aqueducts of Belgrade, cool, mineral-rich, and allegedly better for silk. Or so a former head eunuch once claimed before slipping on soap and fracturing his pride. You still use that water. If nothing else, it keeps the myth alive. Next, drying. Each sock is rolled, not wrung, in a towel made from the softest cotton. You press, not twist. Then they're placed on padded racks that slope at a precise 7-degree angle. Why 7? Because 10 dries too quickly, 5 too slow, and 8 once gave a sock a ripple that looked like rebellion. While they dry, you polish the interior of the sock drawer with a lavender oil blend. He's never said he notices. But the one time you skipped it, the socks were returned with a note, unpleasant musk. The socks were clean. You finish drying, then move to inspection. You hold each one up to the lamplight, rotating it slowly, looking for frays, missed stitches, discoloration. Once, you spotted a faint snag, almost invisible. You mended it yourself with a single strand of matching thread pulled from the inner seam of a spare. You still keep that sock in your personal archive, just in case you ever need a favor from the palace seamstress, or a reminder of how close you came. The final step is folding. You develop the technique over months. Fold in half, toe to heel. Press with warm hands, not hot. Rotate 90 degrees. Fold again. The result is a soft rectangle that sits upright on its own. Impressive? Yes. Necessary? Debatable. Satisfying? Deeply. You arrange them in the drawer according to day. Monday's onyx pair goes furthest left, ceremonial green pair center, night socks, darker, thicker, made for walking cold marble floors, to the right. There are also the emergency socks, undyed, soft as apology, used when a prince dies or a war begins. Quirky tidbit, there's one sock that's never worn. It's dyed saffron, embroidered with blue stars, and sits in the back corner. Legend says it was a gift from a Persian astrologer who read the Sultan's feet and declared him destined to tread the stars. The Sultan laughed, accepted it, and never wore it. But he keeps it, which means you clean it every week, gently, without fail. You finish the drawer and close it slowly, pressing your palm to the wood. The scent of lavender lingers faintly. A eunuch from the outer laundry appears at the door, panting. We lost a pillowcase. You stare. Whose? Prince Mem's. Of course. You rise. The sock ceremony may be complete, but the night is far from over. Missing linens from a prince's bed? That's not just bad laundry, it's political. You take a deep breath, give your gloves a final tug, and step into the corridor, leaving behind the world of tiny seams and delicate soles. The socks may be safe, but the palace? Never. The moment you step into the hallway outside the linen vault, you feel it, the soft buzz of something off. Not panic, exactly. Panic would be loud. This is sharper, quieter. A kind of tension that slithers down stone walls and settles in corners. A pillowcase is missing. Not just any pillowcase, one belonging to Prince Mehmed, the Sultan's youngest son. A boy barely old enough to tie his own sash, yet already the glowing target of court factions who pin their futures to his little sleepy head. You move fast. No need to bark orders. A raised eyebrow gets the junior eunuchs running. They scatter into corridors with eyes sharp and hands empty. You stride toward the inner sorting chamber where the prince's bedding should have landed after last night's collection. It's a narrow room, thick with the scent of starch and the rustle of cotton. Neatly tied bundles line the shelves, each tagged with date, location, and origin wing. You locate the prince's crate immediately, etched with a silver M and the faintest smear of mint oil. His nurse insists on mint, claims it wards off nightmares. The crate is short one item. You run your fingers along the bundles. Sheets, mattress cover, second pillowcase, check. The missing one is the embroidered cover. The fancy one. Pale cream, with an edging of blue tulips and a tiny stitched crescent. Mem's personal insignia. He's had it since birth. You speak without turning. Who processed this crate? A nervous shuffle behind you. Yusuf, says a voice. You sigh. Yusuf. Bright. Clumsy. Probably panicking somewhere as you speak. Historians still debate whether palace laundry staff used linen losses to leverage political outcomes. Some claim accidental mix-ups were just that. But when you're this deep in imperial routines, nothing is just anything. You dispatch a runner to find Yusuf. In the meantime, you do what you always do when the palace leans too hard on your side of the scales. You improvise. You review the dispatch log. Nothing's been signed out to the prince's wing in the last 3 hours. So, either it's still in the palace or it left, unlogged. Which would mean smuggling. It wouldn't be the first time. You once intercepted a concubine's robe sewn with coated thread along the hem, tiny blue and gold beads arranged to mimic the dots of an old calligraphic cipher. The message? A love confession. It almost cost a guard his neck. One boy asks, "What if we run out of blue thread?" Then you borrow, you reply. But never fake it. A eunuch once did that, dyed white thread blue with indigo. The tag bled in the rinse, stained a concubine's prayer scarf, and you swear the whole harem reeked of fury for a week. The scarf was burned. The eunuch, transferred to toilet duty. Permanently. During afternoon rotations, you bring them to the sending alcove. Not to let them apply scents, heaven forbid, but to let them smell the difference. You blindfold them one at a time, wave scent strips under their noses. Rose. Oud. Lavender. One boy hesitates. Flower? You remove his blindfold. Be more specific. Send his memory. It's mood. If you can't recognize what you're creating, don't create it. He nods, shamefaced. You soften. Try again tomorrow. The nose gets sharper. The brain catches up. They return to folding. You supervise, correct, occasionally praise. But you're always watching. Not just for skill, but for who is learning. Who adapts quickly. Who keeps secrets. Who pays attention when no one is speaking. You once trained a boy who never spoke. Ever. You thought him dim. But one day, a robe came back with a scent mismatch. You hadn't caught it. He had. Whispered it. Just once. Saved you embarrassment. 2 years later, he's the sending chief in the summer palace. Sometimes, silence hides brilliance. As the sun fades behind the marble latticework, you gather them for the day's end. You're not just pressing cloth, you say. You're pressing history. When these robes are worn, no one will think of you. That's good. That's your power. The better you do, the more invisible you are. One of the older boys, bold, asks, "Doesn't that feel unfair?" You give him a long look. "No," you say. "It feels safe." They nod. They still don't get it. Not fully. But they will. Tomorrow, they'll return. Their folds will improve. Their silence will deepen. And someday, one of them will stand where you are, correcting, training, shaping the future of invisible power. You extinguish the lamps. The room dims. Linen ghosts fade into shadow. And you smile, just once, because one of the robes on the line stands up perfectly. Balanced. Morning stretches over top copy like gold leaf, pressed against the domes and trickling down to the courtyard cobblestones. The laundry wing hums awake, not with groaning, not with shouting, but with the rhythmic slap of wet cloth against smooth stone and the soft shuffle of slippers on tile. Today is different. Today is a festival day. You feel it in the air before the drums or trumpets sound. There's a brightness, a particular crispness, to how the linens hang, stiff with starch and expectation. It's the Feast of the Tulip, one of the Empire's great spectacles. When fountains run with rosewater, poets get paid, and even the grumpiest janissary gets a fresh turban and a tiny glazed sweet. And your laundry? Oh, your laundry becomes parade-worthy. The palace laundry doesn't just support the festival, it is the festival, in its way. While others polish weapons and prepare gift baskets, your team orchestrates a pageant of cleanliness. The drying courtyard becomes your stage. And the fabrics? Banners of empire, flapping like slow applause. By mid-morning, you're directing the setup with military precision. Every thread-dried linen is pinned in ceremonial order, creating what the palace calls the Parade of Purity. It's part laundry display, part silent propaganda. The lineup starts with the Sultan's linens, nightwear, followed by ceremonial robes, then his personal towels. After that, the Valad Sultan's veils, the prince's kaftans, and finally the harem silks, arranged in a cascading spectrum like an imperial rainbow. You stand back and squint. The colors must align perfectly. Reds should never bleed into golds. Whites must be grouped in odd numbers, superstition again. An even number of whites means mourning, and nobody wants to spend the tulip festival thinking about dead relatives. Your juniors dash back and forth, arms full of cloth and lungs full of panic. You give them a calm nod and a sharp flick of your wrist, reposition, rotate, tighten that corner. They obey. You run this like a ship on windless seas, every fabric held aloft by technique and tension alone. Quirky tidbit, the festival day linens are not washed. They are pre-washed, then steamed, aired, and scented, but never submerged. This is tradition, dating back to a time when one sultan claimed water dulled the spiritual luster of feast garments. He also thought pomegranates whispered advice. But traditions, once born, rarely die. You guide the final stretch of silk onto its brass hook and step back. From the upper balconies, guests have begun to gather, peeking over the edge to admire the laundry lines like they're viewing a living painting. Some clap. A few throw rose petals. You resist the urge to bow. Salim appears, again. He's wearing his best gray robe, scented with something smoky and rare. You suspect he raided the foreign diplomat fragrance chest. Your parade is very vertical, he says, smirking. You glance sideways. Next year, I'll curve it. He nods, half impressed. You know, once upon a time, the Valad Sultan arranged her silk scarves into a lotus bloom for this festival. I remember, you say. We spent 4 days ironing that bloom. She never thanked you. She didn't have to. She wore lilac the next morning. That's a thank you in harem code. Salim hums and walks off, probably to inspect someone else's performance and find it lacking. You wander the rows, trailing your fingers along the linen edges. Everything crisp, aligned, scented with rose, basil, and lemon peel, this year's official blend, chosen after 3 test batches and 1 near-diplomatic incident involving bergamot. Historians still argue whether laundry was really part of palace festivals or just a necessary backdrop. But you know, this isn't backdrop. This is visual proof that the empire runs on order. On care. On invisible work made visible, if only for 1 day. And as the Sultan himself steps onto the viewing terrace, robes billowing, you feel a flicker of satisfaction. His eyes scan the parade, linger on a particularly well-folded sash. He doesn't smile, doesn't nod, but he lingers. That's all you need. Your team exhales. The parade moves on. The viziers march, the concubines giggle under gauzy veils, the harem boys toss flower petals into the crowd. Musicians play lutes with serious faces, and a trained parrot recites a poem from the palace roof. The parrot has terrible rhythm, but excellent enunciation. You use the opportunity to do what you always do, observe. A valet in the corner is sweating more than his role demands. A robe among the janissaries is too white, new, or replaced. You log these things, quietly. Details often bloom into stories. Later, as the festival winds down and guests feast on honeyed plums and cheese-filled pastries, you gather your team. The linens come down, one by one, folded swiftly but lovingly, like treasured books returned to their shelves. You oversee the storage personally. Each cloth returned to its cedar drawer. Each scent evaluated again, some need refreshing. Others must be erased before ordinary routines resume. In a quiet alcove, you find a robe slightly damp. Not stained, not wrinkled, but not right. You lift it to your nose. Chamomile. That's not in this year's scent protocol. You raise your eyebrows. A secret nod to someone's lover? A quiet rebellion? Another mystery to pocket? You don't ask. You just mark the robe with a silent X in your ledger and let it disappear into its drawer. Some questions answer themselves in time. As evening falls, you sit in your quarters, sipping tea that tastes faintly of steam and cinnamon. Outside, the last notes of festival music drift away, replaced by the soft lull of evening calls to prayer. The palace exhales, folds in on itself, prepares for another day. And your linens? Back in their dark, cool drawers, they sleep better than kings. The day after a festival is a dangerous thing. Not for the usual reasons, not hangovers, not leftover pastries turning against fragile stomachs, but because the palace wakes up hungover on its own perfection. Everything feels just a little off. Too bright. Too clean. Like the linens are trying too hard to behave. That's why you're already up, earlier than usual, padding through the laundry wing with your morning tea in one hand and your worry in the other. And there it is. A silk underrobe, returned overnight. No tag. No note. Just folded neatly on your personal bench like a dare. You unfold it slowly. It's harem stock, fine stitching, deep plum color, the kind worn under heavier ceremonial robes. You check the seams. No tears. No creases. But on the inside hem. A stain. Small. Reddish. Sticky. You freeze. Blood? Wine? Pomegranate? The eternal trifecta. You sniff. Sweet. Tart. Could be any of them. You tap the cloth gently, then hold it to the light. No watermark. That rules out wine. But the texture isn't right for blood. You've seen enough of it to know. Blood clings with guilt. This is different. Almost cheerful. Pomegranate. Probably. You hope. You carry it back to the analysis alcove. Yes, you have one. A little room with better lighting and no foot traffic. You lay the robe flat. There's only one mark, no splatter, no drip trail. That's good. But it's placed too high for accidental spill. Near the neckline. Which makes it a message. Or a mistake with consequences. Historians still argue whether palace garments were ever used to pass covert signs of affairs or alliances. You don't argue. You just remember the time a concubine's shawl returned with a tea-stain shaped like a crescent moon. Her rival found herself reassigned to a prayer cell within a week. Coincidence? Cute thought. You tag the robe as held for reassessment and tuck it into the special drawer. Only 3 garments are there. All from past incidents that never got official answers. You call it the pile of suspicion. Every palace laundry should have one. Just as you're logging the incident, another robe arrives. This one from the Janissary barracks. Also fine silk. Also returned off schedule. Also, stained. You stare at the junior eunuch who brought it. 2 in one morning? He shrugs, too eager. They said it was urgent. Did they? He nods. Then scurries off like someone fleeing the consequences of curiosity. You unfurl the robe. Midnight blue. One sleeve crusted with something brownish. You scrape a bit off and sniff. Honey. You blink. That's new. You once read a story about an Ottoman physician who treated wounds with honey. You doubt this is medical. Unless someone took their sweet tooth to a very private place. You log it, clean it carefully, hot water and citrus soap, and send it back with no comment. But you make a quiet note in your ledger, honey on sleeve. Unexplained. Possible scandal, or clumsy dessert. The robe returns the next day, this time immaculate. No message. Just an apology tucked under the collar. A sliver of parchment that reads, Kitchen miscommunication. Please ignore. You don't ignore. You never do. That afternoon, the chief harem attendant sends a request, deep cleanse of the Valide Sultan's bedding. Unexpected soiling, she writes. You raise an eyebrow. The Valide is a woman of control. If her bedding needs urgent laundering, something's happened. Something emotional. Or political. Or both. You inspect the sheets personally. No visible stains, but the scent is off. Jasmine, yes. But also something new, bitter orange. You turn to your assistant. Did she request a scent change? He shakes his head. She's been strict about jasmine since winter. You pause. Bitter orange is the scent of her late rival. One she had cast off 5 years ago. Which means either nostalgia or warning. Maybe both. You clean the sheets, layer them with the proper jasmine blend, and return them. But you fold the corner in a specific way, your way of asking, was this intentional? If the corner is unfolded tomorrow, you'll know. Fabric never lies. It just needs to be asked the right questions. Quirky fact, there's a superstition among the laundry staff. Never clean 3 stained robes in one day. It invites a 4th. You used to laugh at it. Now you've lived it too many times to dismiss it. Sure enough, just before dusk, the 4th robe arrives. This one's different. Not stained. Not damaged. Just wrong. It's a robe you folded yesterday. You remember the precise fold, the soft vanilla scent, the inner collar tucked just so. Now, it's been unfolded, worn, and returned. But no one signed for it. No one should have worn it yet. It was meant for the Sultan's private prayer time tomorrow. You stare at it, heart suddenly beating harder. Someone took it, used it, returned it, without permission, and without explanation. You sit down, carefully, the robe across your lap. This is not just a breach of protocol. This is something else. A test? A message? Or a warning? You logged it under a new code, displaced without cause. Only used twice in your entire career. You fold the robe again, extra carefully this time. You send it with lavender, a calming note. And you store it separately, away from the others. You lean back, stare at the wall. Something's shifting. The laundry tells you everything, eventually. All you have to do is keep watching the stains. You burn the robe. Not the one with the pomegranate stain. Not the honey sleeve mystery, either. Those you archived. But this one, the displaced, misused, unsanctioned robe? That one you fed to the copper fire pit without ceremony. It's not just a reaction. It's policy. A robe used outside its assigned time, without traceable authorization, becomes contaminated, not just with scent, but with intent. You can't risk its reappearance. Not in a palace where fabric speaks before mouths do. The fire crackles. A sweet, acrid scent curls upward, charred silk, a whisper of lavender, and something else you don't name. You watch until the final thread shrivels, then turn the iron poker gently to finish the ritual. This is the part of your job most eunuchs hate. The purge. Historians rarely write about it, probably because it feels too dramatic. Burning things in copper pits like some velvet-clad witchcraft. But the truth is, sometimes, things must be erased. Carefully. Quietly. You run your laundry like a sanctum. But like any sanctuary, it requires cleansing. The copper fire pit sits behind the inner chambers, disguised as an old dye vat. You installed it yourself. Well, reinstalled. It had been abandoned, soot-caked and ignored. You had it polished, blessed, relined with fireproof clay. Now it's your final answer to final problems. Over the years, you've purged. A concubine's veil, scented with forbidden narcissus oil. A ceremonial sash stained with almond milk and shame. A pair of royal leggings discovered in a janissary's private trunk. Each time, you left no trace. No ashes leave the pit. They're swept, cooled, and ground into soap dye used for floor rags. Practical. Poetic. Today's robe burns slower than expected. Perhaps the lining was heavier. Or maybe intent lingers longer in silk than in cotton. You wait. No one else is allowed near the pit. This is your ritual. You finish, sweep the last ashes, and return to the main hall where your juniors are rearranging storage crates. You nod at them to continue. No one asks about the fire. They know better. But one boy, Tyre, the one with the quick fingers and quiet eyes, glances at the door behind you. You catch his gaze. Just for a second. He knows something was destroyed. You make a note to watch him. Later, you head to the archival room, a vaulted storage space lined with linen-bound record books, scent ledgers, and pattern logs. You keep everything. Who or what, when, where, and under what scent. It's not bureaucracy. It's protection. You pull out Archive Volume 13, Robes, Private Use. You update the entry with a simple red slash. A signal only you use. Means, burned. Unrecoverable. With purpose. On the facing page, you list the events of the day. Then you pause. Because your hand, almost of its own accord, writes something new. Joyless robe. Wrong hour. Watched. You stare at it. The phrase sits oddly in your mouth. Sometimes your instincts write faster than your thoughts. You've learned to trust that. A knock at the door breaks your focus. Salim. Of course. Something's gone missing, he says, stepping inside like he owns every tile. Hasn't it always? You murmur. He smirks. A harem girl's mirror. Gold frame. Insignificant, unless she tells the right person. Blame a pigeon, you say, turning back to your book. He watches you. Then walks toward the ledger. Anything worth sharing? He asks. You close it. He doesn't push. Just leans against the doorframe. You burned something today. You say nothing. He grins. I smelled it. Jasmine and guilt. Then he leaves. You wait until his footsteps fade, then turn back to the ledger. The robe you burned wasn't marked in blood or honey. It wasn't even stained. But it was wrong. It had the feel of a script that had already been read aloud. Too smooth. Too creased. Too prepared. Someone used it to send a message, and returned it like an apology. Or a threat. Either way, it was no longer fabric. It was a weapon. And you don't keep weapons in your drawers. You resume the purge. Not just by fire, but by hand. You move through the storage cabinets like a surgeon, pulling garments you've marked over the past few weeks as off. Not ruined. Not forbidden. Just wrong. A veil that smells of crushed mint and desperation. A sash woven with an odd zigzag pattern you've never logged. A handkerchief embroidered with what looks like a name, but isn't anyone registered. Each one gets tagged for removal. Then, you write up the light report. The formal note sent to palace record keepers. It says, linen reduction. 17 items withdrawn due to damage, discoloration, or seasonal wear. No mention of smoke. Or secrets. Historians still argue whether Ottoman laundry masters purged garments as a routine or a response to political undercurrents. If only they knew. You burn things not because they're dirty, but because they're too clean. Too precise. Too strategic. Fabric tells the truth. Eventually. You're just the editor. That night, you light incense in your quarters, rose and myrrh. You sit with your tea, staring at your calloused hands. You've folded robes, repaired veils, scented towels, ironed lies. But sometimes, it's the act of destroying a garment that keeps the balance. Your juniors will never know the full story. Neither will Salim. But Tahir? He will. Soon. Because he watched the fire too long. And sometimes, the one who notices the purge is already part of the next story. There's a shift in tone when you enter the harem's linen hall. Not the usual hush of protocol or even the watchful silence of the harem guards. No, this is a different silence. It's silkier. Taut. Like a freshly starched veil hiding more than just faces. You adjust your robes, step softly into the cool chamber, and immediately the air thickens with jasmine and the soft rustle of silk. You've handled all kinds of fabric, but nothing moves like harem silk. It slinks, it sighs, it remembers. Today's delivery is the monthly inventory of garments from the harem proper. 47 veils, 29 sashes, 15 kaftans, 6 ceremonial underskirts, and, oddly, 3 maternity petticoats. That last one gives you pause. Maternity petticoats are rarely sent out for laundering. Not because they're sacred, but because they signal something too important to risk gossip. Their fabric is looser, lighter, stitched with extra panels, as if sewn with caution and hope. 3, though? You raise a brow and glance at the list again. All 3 are tagged under the same room number, Chamber 17E. One of the quiet wings. The kind reserved for women no longer in the prime circle, but not quite faded into prayer and poetry retirement. Interesting. Historians still debate how much control eunuchs had over harem records, especially relating to pregnancies. Officially, you're just laundry. Unofficially, you know the heartbeat of this palace better than most midwives. You sort the petticoats gently. No stains. No tears. But one of them carries a scent you haven't catalogued in over a year, galbanum. Sharp. Green. Nearly bitter. It was favored by a concubine named Lael. She was dismissed after being caught in the same garden twice with the same guard. You'd heard she was gone. Apparently not. You tag the petticoats and move on. But your thoughts stay with Chamber 17E. The veils come next. So delicate they flutter if you even think too hard in their direction. Each veil is checked for size, shape, transparency. Too sheer, and it's rejected, reworked with embroidery or doubled in cloth. You catch one that fails the test. You hold it up. Even under the softest lantern light, it glows. Not from opulence, but from misuse. This veil wasn't worn inside. It was worn outside. Under the sun. That slight discoloration, the faint stiffness, that's from sweat. Not the kind you get from walking a corridor. The kind you get from running. Or fleeing. You mark it discreetly and replace it with a standard veil from your emergency drawer. The kind that says, everything's normal. Nothing to see here. Quirky fact, veils have their own language. The way a corner is folded, the pattern of embroidery, the set woven into the threads. You once received a veil embroidered with 5 dots and a looped line, code, you later learned, for I'm ready. You still don't know who sent it or for whom, but you passed it to Salim. He smiled for 3 days straight. As you sort the sashes, you find one coil tighter than regulation. You unroll it carefully. No tears. But inside is a small object, a pin. Plain. Brass. Useless, unless you're trying to conceal something sharp inside something soft. You hold it for a moment, then drop it into your private chest. If it's needed again, someone will come looking. You'll know who based on how they ask. Later, you inspect the underskirts. Heavier than usual. One is stitching along the inner lining that doesn't match the rest, too tight, too recent. You peel back the seam with a small blade you keep for emergencies. Inside, a folded slip of parchment. You read it quickly. The bird no longer sings, but the cage door is open. You fold it back and tuck it into your sleeve. A message? A goodbye? A threat? Historians still argue whether the harem was a prison or a sanctuary. The truth? It was both. A woman could rise to unimaginable power or vanish in a whisper. And you, with your hands in their wardrobes, see all the tracks left behind. As you prepare the return crates, the chief attendant enters. A woman named Fatma, with a voice like crushed velvet and a memory for every mistake ever made. Is the inventory clean? She asks. As snow, you reply. She eyes you. I heard one of the veils was replaced. You nod. Too sheer. Would have failed inspection. She exhales. Good. We don't need another incident like last year. You both know what she's referring to. The veil that led to a balcony jump. Or a push. No one ever agreed on the ending. You seal the crates. Press the wax. Sign with the symbol you invented, a folded corner, looped like a ribbon. Only your crew uses it. Silent, subtle, and understood by those who need to understand. You return to your wing just before sunset. There, in the softest light, you open the parchment from earlier. Read the words again. The bird no longer sings, but the cage door is open. You tap the paper against your palm. Someone is planning something. And for once, it might not be about laundry at all. Still, the fabric always leads somewhere. All you have to do is follow the thread. You don't usually get summoned. That's not how your world works. You appear when needed, melt back when not. Quiet presence, consistent folds, nothing more. So when the chief physician himself sends a eunuch runner with an urgent request, laundry expertise required in chamber 14B, bring your toolkit, you know something's wrong. You grab your toolkit. Not your usual bundle of folding boards and scented oils. No. This is the other one. The quiet one. With gloves, pincer tweezers, a magnifier lens, and your sample blotting papers. You don't ask questions. Not yet. You're already halfway across the palace before your brain catches up. Chamber 14B is sealed off when you arrive. 2 guards outside, bored but stiff with ceremony. The kind of men who pretend not to listen but hear everything. Inside, the chamber is cool. Dimly lit, curtains drawn. The air smells of boiled herbs and faint panic. A bed dominates the center, soft linen rumpled, corners slightly torn. 2 physicians and a eunuch from the upper hall stand nearby, murmuring in clipped tones. A woman lies curled on the mattress, eyes open but unfocused. Not dead. Not well. Somewhere in between. You don't ask what happened. You don't need to. Instead, you approach the sheets. They've already been stripped and placed in a copper basin, as if soaking them in warm water might make the truth less sharp. But you reach in anyway, pull one out, and lay it flat on the tiled floor. You examine it. White linen. High thread count. Edges scalloped with fine embroidery, harem issue. Stiff where it shouldn't be. You run your fingers along the center seam. Damp. Slightly rough. You sniff. Not rosewater. Not jasmine. Something acidic. You unfold your blotting paper and press gently. It comes away pink. Blood. But thin. Not the iron-heavy spatter of a wound. This is diluted. Possibly mixed with, what's that scent? You press again. Pomegranate? You frown. Historians still argue whether laundry was ever used to conceal or expose palace crimes. They usually imagine the robe or veil as evidence. But a bed sheet? That's too personal for fiction. And far too telling. You hold up a corner to the physician. Do you know what happened? He shakes his head. She woke up coughing. Delirious. Says she saw birds flying inside her chest. You nod. Not because you understand, but because your job isn't to explain. Your job is to reveal. You check the pillowcases. One is soaked through with sweat. The other, pristine. Too pristine. As if it was changed. You ask, who changed the bedding? No one answers. You lift the clean pillowcase. Something rustles. You freeze. Carefully, you turn it inside out. Tucked between the folds is a second piece of fabric. Smaller. Dyed gray-blue. Not from this room. You unfold it. It's a headscarf. Men's style. Coarse cotton. Worn at the edges. And it smells faintly of saffron and crushed fennel, scents used only in the outer kitchens. So, a visitor. Not authorized. And someone cleaned up quickly, but not perfectly. You look at the physician. I need to take this to the laundry. He hesitates. Why? Because linen doesn't lie. You carry the scarf back wrapped in your own sleeve. Once in your analysis alcove, you place it on your clean bench and test it again. Same smell. A faint smudge of what might be grease, likely from a kitchen door handle. No monogram. But the fold? Left over right. That's a style used by cooks, not guards. You pull the scent ledger. Cross-reference the ingredients. You find a match. One kitchen boy, assigned to the fish cellar, issued a scarf dyed in this exact shade 3 weeks ago. You circle the name. Then you return to the sheet. You soak the bloodied linen in cold rosewater, not to clean it, but to see how the stain bleeds. And bleed it does. In the pattern of a half circle. Not a spatter. Not a slash. A press. Like someone leaned in, forehead first. Poison? Exhaustion? Fear? You'll never know for sure. But you wash the sheet anyway. Delicately. Respectfully. You use a neutral scent, one reserved for death cloths and grief robes. Pure frankincense water. The girl survived, for now. The scarf was passed quietly to Salim. He raised one brow when he saw it, nodded once, and said nothing. The sheet, freshly folded, is returned to the physician's office in a plain parcel, untagged. But inside, you stitched a single white thread into one corner, a signal used only in the old days, to mean investigated and cleared by internal authority. Old school palace laundry talk. Most don't use it anymore. But Salim knows. And he'll understand. Later that night, you sit in the courtyard alone, the scent of frankincense still lingering on your sleeves. This job, this life, it's not about cleanliness. It never was. It's about reading what's left behind. A stain. A scent. A thread. Fabric is memory. And you? You're the mind that remembers for everyone else. The mildew hits your nose before you even see the fabric. It's a rank, earthy stench, like wet bread left in a wooden drawer during monsoon season. You stop mid-step, nostrils flaring, stomach curling. Someone's messed up. Badly. You follow the smell through the sorting chamber and into the linen storage vault, where rows of hanging laundry sway slightly in the draft. There, shoved into a dark corner like a guilty thought, hangs the culprit, a ceremonial bedsheet. Gold-trimmed, monogrammed, and absolutely reeking. Your eyes narrow. This isn't just forgetfulness. This is sabotage. You pull the sheet down with gloved hands. It's damp. Too damp. Someone either stored it before drying or, more likely, sprinkled it on purpose. You bring it into the light. And there they are. Spoiled dates. Mashed, sticky, pressed into the corner seems like a rotten signature. Sabotage confirmed. You sigh. Not because of the sheet, though it will need purging, but because this is how turf wars begin in the palace. Quiet. Sticky. Passive-aggressive. The kind of war fought with mold instead of blades. Someone wants your operation undermined. Historians rarely credit eunuchs with pettiness. They picture you as either stoic guardians or scheming masterminds. Never in between. Never as you really are, endlessly tired men in slippers battling over linen shelf space and scent rights. You march the sheet to the isolation chamber. It can't contaminate the others. You lay it flat on the sacrificial tile slab, spray it with your strongest neutralizing solution, alum, vinegar, thyme, and let it bake under lamplight. Then you gather your team. Who touched crate 6B yesterday? You ask, voice low. 3 juniors raise timid hands. Which one of you signed the inspection slip? None of them answer. You sigh again. This will be slow. You start interviews. Quiet ones. A few probing questions, a few test swatches. You lay out 5 identical linen samples and ask each boy to fold one. You know your team by their folds, the angle, the pressure, the thumbprint left behind. The third boy, Rami, folds just like the mildew sheet. Left side slightly wider. Press too shallow. You make no accusations. Just nod. Later, you check the sending logs. And there it is. Rami signed off on a batch of Valad Sultan pillowcases, twice, in 1 week. An overlap. An error. Or a setup. Either way, the spoiled sheet makes a little more sense now. You summon Rami quietly. Offer him tea. The palace way of saying, you're not in trouble, yet. He sits stiffly. Doesn't touch the cup. You don't like dates? You ask casually. He blinks. Not really. Me neither. Too sticky. A pause. I hear some boys in the outer wings still stuff them into cauldrons. You continue. To sour the steam, ruin the batch. Once, someone even poisoned a soap pot that way. Little trick from a rival wing in Bursa. He swallows. You sip your tea. You didn't do that, though. Did you? No, he says quickly. Too quickly. You nod. Set down your cup. Good, you say. Because I just wanted to know who taught you how. His eyes widen. And you know you've got him. Turns out, the dates came from a eunuch dismissed months ago, transferred to the kitchens after a mishandling of the Sultan's curtains. He left behind more than shame. He left a legacy of petty vengeance. Rami learned from him. Watched. Absorbed. Waited. You dismiss Rami quietly. Assign him to the wool beat, hot, itchy, forgettable. The punishment isn't the demotion. It's the boredom. Then you clean house. You bring in your senior team and reset the entire inventory. Every cloth is relogged. Every crate rescented. Every hanger checked for tampering. And just in case, you swap out all date-based set recipes for the month. Let them stew over that. Salim appears mid-evening, of course. He eyes the cleaned linens. War declared. Not yet, you reply. He smirks. I heard someone cursed your steam vat. You raise an eyebrow. It'll take more than fermented fruit to undo me. He steps closer, lowers his voice. The kitchen eunuchs are restless. They think you're getting too much attention. Too much access. You shrug. I clean things. That's all. He chuckles. That's exactly the problem. And then he leaves. You return to the vault. The spoiled sheet now lies flat and clean. Salvageable. But not forgettable. You won't burn it. No, this one you'll keep. A reminder. Quirky fact, some eunuchs believe mold is a sign of spiritual unrest. That it only grows in places where secrets fester. You're not a believer. But you've seen enough spoiled linen to know it doesn't just appear. It grows where something else has rotted first. You seal the sheet in a cedar box. Add a label in your tightest script, enemy within. Then you lock it. There are no swords in your wing. No blades. No blood. But the war still rages. And you? You fight with soap, scent, and silence. The laundry ledger is your Bible. It's also your novel, your diary, your court transcript, and your confessional. Every page whispers something. And tonight, it's lying. You sit at your long cedar desk, shoulders tight, oil lamp flickering, eyes squinting at the latest log entries. The ink is right. The set marks are correct. The folds pass visual inspection. But something is off. You flip back 3 days. A batch of harem veils returned with double stamps, once at intake, once at dispatch, but the cloths themselves didn't change hands. That's not possible. You run your fingers down the page, feel the slight texture where someone wrote too quickly, pressing too hard. Then, you spot it, 2 entries for the same garment ID, logged by different hands, both time-stamped within a quarter hour. Impossible. Or intentional. This is more than sloppiness. It's forgery. Light, delicate, almost impressive forgery, but in your domain, even a beautiful lie is a crime. Historians often debate whether laundry logs in the palace were ceremonial or functional. They were both. The record was your proof of life. A towel with no entry might as well have never existed. A robe falsely logged? That's rewriting reality. You reach into your private drawer and pull out the ink comparison board, a neat slab of polished ivory with lines of standard palace inks drawn in narrow strips. You hold the suspect ledger page next to it. The culprit used the wrong batch. Ink number 17, reserved for festival robes. No one should be using that on routine entries. You cross-reference the initials beside the entry. AM assigned to outer veil duty. Not someone with access to the harem dispatch log. Which means one of two things: either AM was covering for someone, or someone forged AM's initials. You head to the dispatch station. It's empty at this hour. Just the soft tick of the water clock and the scent of drying cardamom towels hanging near the warmth. You unlock the scent cabinet and pull out a box labeled Archive, Surplus Scented INK. Inside, nestled in velvet, are vials of ink with faint perfumes added to deter forgery. You remove ink number 17 and uncap it. Immediately, the air smells of faint fig and ash, a rare blend, hard to fake. You take the ledger page, pass it under your nose. There it is. The same perfume. Someone used official ink, meaning they had access. Meaning it wasn't an accident. You lean back in your chair and stare at the ceiling, where light from your lamp dances across wooden beams. Someone is erasing stains, not from cloth, but from history. You check the preceding entry batch. A robe, harem issue, reportedly cleaned and returned. Except, there was no matching intake. It never arrived. There's no physical record, no set ledger, no tag. Only the log. You feel the thrill of discovery, and its heavy weight. Someone is inventing linens. Which means someone is smuggling messages. You pull the emergency scroll, a list of sensitive fabric IDs you keep for reference. Robes used for diplomatic visits, veils worn during quiet pregnancies, towels issued in crisis. You find a match. Robe hashtag 1148B, marked as returned, safe. The problem? You burned that robe last spring. Personally. It had blood on the hem and a sliced lining. There's no chance it still exists. Someone logged a ghost. And that, in your language, is war. You don't ring the alarm. You don't summon guards. You do what you've always done. You rewrite the lie. You pull the offending page and replace it with a copy you logged yourself. Everything accurate, precise, traceable. But you leave one clue, a sentence in the margin. Oud and clove. Your signature for investigated, compromised. Only Salim knows that mark. And tonight, he will notice. Just before dawn, a knock comes. Soft, rhythmic, the pattern used for non-verbal alerts between senior eunuchs. You open the back door. Salim steps inside, robe crisp, eyes sharper than you've ever seen them. You hold up the ghost log. He doesn't touch it, just nods. You found it, he says. More than one, you reply. They're building a story from air. He glances at your inkboard, then the ledger. We'll need to rewrite it back. You both sit. Two men in control of nothing but paper and cloth, holding the softest weapons in the hardest place. Quirky tidbit, there's a saying in the laundry wing, a robe can hide a dagger, but a ledger hides an empire. You used to laugh at it. Now you wonder if it wasn't a warning. You and Salim go line by line through the week's entries. You find 2 more duplicates, for suspicious timestamps, and a robe logged 3 times under 3 different wings. All without physical trace. When you finish, the sky outside glows with the blue-gray of near morning. Salim stands, stretches, cracks his neck. Someone's laundering history, he says. And we've been laundering the truth. You nod. Not anymore. As he leaves, you fold the replacement ledger page into your sleeve and lock the original in your archive. Not to destroy. Not yet. You need proof. Because if this keeps going, you're not just correcting folds. You're folding over lies. It begins with a whisper. Not in your ear, not in the halls, but in the folds. A single crease, where there should be none. A hem pressed too hard, held too long. You spot it in a ceremonial sash returned from the Treasury Quarter, clean, scented properly, tagged with the right code. And yet, it's wrong. You know your folds like your own hands. This one isn't yours. You refold it automatically, smooth the edge flat again, but your mind's no longer on the fabric. You've been feeling it for weeks now, something shifting. Not just in the linens, but in the air around the laundry wing. Your juniors speak more quietly. Deliveries arrive earlier than scheduled or later than permitted. And Salim, he hasn't been back in 2 days. You're being frozen out. You check the roster and find your fears confirmed. Someone's reassigned you. Without your sign-off, without your seal. Starting next week, Your authority is limited to outer wing laundry only, kitchen cloths, guard towels, garden robes. Nothing from the harem. Nothing from the Sultan's chambers. Nothing that matters. You sit, alone in your office, reading the new assignment order on soft parchment. The signature is stamped, not written. Official. Final. Historians might one day frame this as a peaceful transition, a quiet retirement, maybe even a promotion cloaked as a lateral move. They won't mention what you feel now, that subtle, bone-deep ache of being removed from the story. You pace the vault where you've worked every day for decades. Run your fingers along cedar drawers you designed. Open the ledger drawer and take out the page with your last personal notation, the clove-ended scent. Still smells sharp. Still dangerous. You flip to the older pages. Fold by fold, you trace your career backward. The towel you dried after the princess's wedding. The robe with the stitched warning no one else noticed. The veil with the faint trace of henna that proved a lover's betrayal. It's all here. Every line you wrote, every truth pressed between pages of linen and time. And now, you've been demoted to sweat rags and meat-stained aprons. You stare out the high window as clouds drift lazily past. You'd hoped, perhaps foolishly, that you would finish your time here the way you started, unnoticed, essential, indispensable. But someone's pulling threads. Someone wants you gone. You leave the office slowly. Wander through the halls, not checking on anything, just saying goodbye. The air tastes different already. Too much lemon oil. They're overcompensating. Trying to pretend they don't miss your precision. You reach the central linen courtyard and stop cold. There, on the bench, your bench, is a crumpled robe. Unfolded. Damp. Unsorted. Disrespect. You lift it. It's a harem underrobe, marked for ceremonial use. Still warm. Which means it was placed here not by accident, but by defiance. Someone trying to say, this is what you are now. A folder of forgotten things. You stare at it for a moment, then walk to the fire pit. Not the small one near your office. The real one, the copper maw you keep behind the sealed doors, where memories go to be erased. You toss in the robe and watch it catch. The silk blackens. The embroidery bubbles. The scent, a blend of mint and myrrh, curls into the air like a departing breath. You don't look away. Then, you go back inside. And you pack. No grand speech. No confrontation. You fold your personal robe, gray, simple, worn smooth at the collar, and tuck it into your cedar satchel. You take your inkboard, your magnifier, and one ledger page from your archive, the first one you ever signed. The rest you leave. A younger eunuch passes you in the hallway and stumbles mid-step. You're going? You nod. I've been reassigned. He opens his mouth, then closes it. You keep walking. But before you reach the exit, you take one last detour to the dispatch room. There, you place a single folded towel onto the table. Pure white. Perfect edges. No tag. Except, in the corner, a single lavender thread stitched into a loop. Your code. It means, this isn't over. And you know someone, maybe Salim, maybe someone else, will see it. They'll understand. Because laundry doesn't forget. It absorbs. It records. It waits. The air in the cellar is colder than you remember. Not cold enough to see your breath, but cold enough that the stone seeps through your slippers, makes your knees ache. You walk slower now, not out of fatigue, but out of something heavier, irrelevance. The outer wing laundry is silent except for the rhythmic drip of a leaking pipe and the occasional rustle of rats in the pantry cloths. This is the underbelly of the empire, grease-streaked aprons, foot towels from sweaty janissaries, napkins stiff with overboiled lentil paste. No silk here. No embroidery. Nothing fragrant, unless you count the vinegar barrel a junior once mistook for a bath soak. This is your new station. And the worst part? You're good at it. The folds still come naturally. Your fingers still move with elegance. You still have the perfect pinch of time to cut through the meat stench, still know when to change water before the heat turns soap into soup. But no one here understands the ritual. They treat laundry like punishment. You once saw someone fold a towel in half, not thirds, not press. Just half. You corrected him, of course. Quietly. With a look. He hasn't made that mistake again. But the rest? They don't get it. You no longer receive robes from the harem. No more secret folds from the Sultan's personal valet. No more linen messages soaked in rose and coated thread. Just piles of cotton, coarsely woven, limp with dull repetition. And yet, you notice something odd. A sheet arrives, too soft for the kitchen inventory. No grease, no ash. A new junior says it came from the garden guest wing. You didn't even know the guest wing used your station. You inspect it. The weave is fine. The corner sharp. But one edge is folded, deliberately, into a clover. That's not regulation. That's a sign. A code you haven't seen in years. You press it flat. Tucked inside the crease is a thread. Scented. Oud and clove. Your code. You smile. Whoever sent this knows you're still watching. Still ready. You launder the sheet carefully. Scentless. Folded into perfection. Then you send it back, tucked with a single lavender thread in the hem. The next day, another appears. Then another. It builds. A pattern. A slow unfurling. You're no longer the master of linens. Not officially. But underground, in folds and threads, in scent and silence, your influence returns. You never needed a title. You needed access. And now you have what matters. Because the thing about fabric is, it drapes. It wraps. It hides. But it also connects. Thread by thread, robe by robe, the story begins to wrap around again. You ready the burial linens. Not for someone else. For yourself. Every laundry master prepares their own. It's tradition. Your shroud is cotton, not silk, plain, soft, pure. Folded once, for humility. You send it with frankincense. Nothing else. You place it in your private drawer. Not out of despair, but as a promise. Because someday, someone will unfold that linen. They'll see the stitching. They'll smell the scent. And they'll know. You didn't fall. You folded yourself. Perfectly. And now, the steam cools. The fire dies low. The cauldron's quiet to a warm hum, like an old memory gently stirred. The linens are folded, the scents faded into their final notes. The palace, once noisy with whispers and silk, stills beneath the weight of sleep. You imagine yourself in that hidden cellar, sitting among cedar drawers and parchment ledgers, the air filled with the faint ghost of rosewater. Your hands, worn but steady, rest on clean fabric. The walls no longer echo. They just breathe. This life, this strange, invisible empire of folds and fire, asks so much. Yet it gives something few notice, clarity. In this quiet space, where stains confess their secrets and scent tells truth, there's no need for noise. Just breath. Just stillness. The palace will rise again tomorrow. Fresh sheets. New veils. Whispers reborn. But not yet. Not now. Now, everything is in place. Every thread smoothed. Every robe accounted for. The fires sleep. The linens dream. So take a breath. Feel the softness of clean cloth on your skin, the warmth of a sunlit towel pressed from memory. Hear the distant hush of water lapping in copper basins. You are safe here. You are still. The night has folded you in. And the story has been tucked in, crease by crease, beside you. Sweet dreams.